Hello and welcome to the April Circular Economy Joint Stakeholder Forum. My name's Joe Shields and I lead the engagement team within the Circular Economy Directorate, and I'll be your host for today's Joint Stakeholder Forum. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So just a few very quick housekeeping things. For today's Circular Economy Joint Stakeholder Forum, this is a combined meeting for industry, local authorities, trade associations and the waste sector, and it's in the same format as previous iterations. The Q&A function will be live, so you can submit questions and there'll be adequate time to do so in between presentations. But please note that we will only be taking questions on the subject matter discussed during today's call. And if I could ask you to listen to each presentation in its entirety before submitting your questions, as they may be answered further on in that presentation. We will work to answer as many questions as we can during today's forum, but given the large volume of attendees and the tightly packed agenda, we may well have to take some away and answer them in our Circular Economy newsletter. Also, if I could suggest that everybody, when you do submit a question, you make a reference to which agenda item you're referring to. This will help us keep track of each of the questions and make sure that we answer them accurately as well. If we can move on to today's agenda. Thank you very much. We have various updates around circular economy, simpler recycling in England, extended producer responsibility for packaging, and as you can see there, we have some guest speakers from Biffa, WRAP, Whitbread, EA, and also some DEFRA colleagues as well, and also PAC UK. Next slide, please. And then we'll do some final roundups of engagement activities upcoming with a close after that. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So without further ado, I'll get us started and hand it over to Alex Renison for an update around circular economy.
Thank you very much, Joe. Delighted to be here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Alex Renison, Joint Head of Circular Economy Strategy here in DEFRA's Circular Economy Directorate, so leading the team responsible for pushing for the development of our circular economy strategy for England, working very, very closely with colleagues at all the other government departments involved in this endeavour, given that it is indeed shared across government, so particularly working with DESNZ, DBT, the Treasury, MHCLG and more. If we could have the next slide, please. What I wanted to do here today was give you a broad update on where we are in the evolution of our circular economy agenda, and that starts very much with drawing your attention to a big set piece speech the Secretary of State for DEFRA gave on 27th of March, so Thursday last week, very much setting out his vision for the UK's transition to a circular economy. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this speech already, but I'll take you through some of the highlights and reflect a little bit on what I think it means for our whole agenda. I think the Secretary of State started in fairly conventional terms, highlighting the enormous volume of waste that we generate within the UK economy, and giving what you'd expect to be fairly well rehearsed and quite standard reasons for why that is a terrible, terrible thing, both economically, societally and socially. But I think from there, he very much departed from the kind of rhetoric with which we've been familiar in the resources and waste world over previous years, and dove headlong into a kind of quite a passionate support and evocation of why we need to be transitioning fundamentally as an economy away from our defunct linear model and towards something that's genuinely circular. The Secretary of State was very keen to reflect on the many positive reasons for doing that, and you'll be unsurprised to learn that he was majoring very, very heavily on this government's 5 missions, in particular economic growth and enabling Britain to become a clean energy superpower. Missions that we think, particularly in the circular economy space, really go hand in hand. And the Secretary of State was very, very keen to reflect on the fact that we can really have the best of all worlds here by driving a circular transition. We can save industry money, we can be more efficient with our resources and therefore increase our national resilience, and we can of course make enormous strides forwards when it comes to protecting the environment. And indeed we have to do all of those things. We can't pick and choose what kind of goals we seek to achieve by transitioning to a circular economy, because there is so much that we need to achieve as government, and the benefit of circularity is that it allows us to access all of those many prospective changes and really drive forward progress. Case in point, the Secretary of State was giving this speech at the Dockshed, a really cutting-edge development in Canada Water, helped developed by Mace Group and British Land, a real illustration of where you can have growth and sustainability going very hand in hand. That was a building constructed largely from recycled concrete and sustainable materials, done so affordably, made in a way which is cheaper to run due to the selection of materials and the way in which it was constructed, all in all serving as a really fascinating cutting edge sort of test case for where circularity can benefit all of us and indeed benefit the many activities that we do, both as government, local authorities, as businesses, and as private economic actors as well. The Secretary of State was very keen to focus on the fact that obviously transitioning to a circular economy will be quite a complex process, but that's where we're looking to introduce a strategy that with a sufficiently long time horizon and breadth of focus. So when we publish our circular economy strategy for England in the autumn, you'll notice that it comes with a pretty lengthy 25-year time horizon and beyond, and will be supported in the first instance by specific sector roadmaps on the built environment, agri-food, transport, textiles, and chemicals and plastics. The reason that we've selected those sectors initially is, as I said on the slide, a combination of their ability to drive forward economic growth and the environmental aims that we're seeking to achieve through our circular transition. But such is the complexity of the transition and the length of time we need to affect it. These are not and never will be the only sectors at which we look. And indeed, I would expect that as soon as we've published the strategy and the first cut of roadmaps in the autumn, I say we as whole of government, not just DEFRA, will be pivoting towards developing further roadmaps in sectors not included in the first tranche. So this is, I think, a starter for 10. In many ways, and a recognition of the fact that a transformation this complex will require quite a lot of time, involvement, and initiative from all of us to get right and to keep mapping out how that transition needs to run. So you can read the full text of the Secretary of State speech on gov.uk, and that link will be included for you also in follow-up materials to this session. I encourage you to go and read it. The Secretary of State had quite a strong personal hand in drafting and really felt attached to the message that he was conveying, and is delighted to be able to offer a bit more clarity on exactly what we're doing in the circular space. Put up the next slide, please. A bit more detail then on what the implications are when it comes to developing the roadmaps around the priority sectors I've just elucidated. We're going to need to do an awful lot of engagement with you and many other stakeholders not present on this call. And it's also true that we shouldn't just be thinking about those priority sectors drawn out in the Secretary of State speech. We should also be considering all the many cross-cutting enablers that we should consider if we're actually going to affect meaningful change towards circularity right across the piece. And so what I've done here is show you, obviously we will be prioritising engagement with you in the 5 priority sectors that will underpin the roadmaps that we publish in the autumn. So it'll come as no surprise that we therefore want to lean in really heavily with you and take forward conversations on agri-food, textiles, chemicals and plastics, transport and the built environment. It is also true that we are also going to need to take forward meaningful conversations with you on some of the cross-cutting areas. We can't do all of that at once, and I suggest that we don't do that, otherwise it gets quite confused for you and indeed for us. We should look to sequence this engagement activity to ensure high-quality conversations and lean into the fact that we don't necessarily need to have everything solved and sorted by the time we publish a first version of the strategy in the autumn. We have the luxury of time after that to ensure that we can cover everything in proper detail and get it right. But alongside those initial 5 sectors throughout the rest of the year, we'll also be looking to engage with you on the cross-cutting enabled on the slide highlighted in red. So finance and investments, the way in which we access funding to help drive forward the investment we need, whether that's in infrastructure, whether it's in skills, whether it's in anything else we require to deliver circularity. We'll be looking at public procurement and how we can best leverage the enormous spending power that government can harness to best effect. Business support and innovation, given that you as businesses and other stakeholders will need to be supported through that transition, and you will need a lot of input, guidance and help from government in order to get that right. Electronics as a commodity, they span all of the priority sectors, and I think if we ignore them, we're going to come unstuck very quickly, especially given that that waste electronics is an enormous and growing waste stream in the UK, and we're second only to Norway in the rate at which we produce waste electricals per capita. And of course, finally, measurement data and metrics. Obviously, I think we as a selection of people and stakeholders probably have a reasonably good understanding of what circularity actually means, but we don't necessarily have reliable ways in which to capture and to measure our progress towards establishing it. So I think the strategy that we publish in the autumn is going to have to very much recognise that there's an enormous work stream in defining how we properly measure and capture the progress that we're making towards circularity, such that we can keep building on the platform established by the strategy in the autumn, iterate it and grow it as we better understand how we can track our progress, measure our success, and predict the impact of future policies and interventions. Next slide, please. Thank you. Much of that engagement has already begun. Delighted to throw lots of text up on the screen detailing the many conversations that the Circular Economy Task Force have already been having with industry. I won't go through all of this in full, we don't have time, but you can see on the slide there that across a whole range of priority sectors and some of the cross-cutting areas, we've already started to have an enormous number of individual, trade association and other types of conversations between the task force and yourselves, and we very much want to continue this and keep scaling it up. So if we move on to the final slide, here's a few upcoming bits and pieces that you can expect to see from us in future. Again, this is not exhaustive, but certainly throughout April, there's going to be quite a lot of direct engagement with the task force and yourselves, more so at scale. As we go. So the task force, as I said, have been doing a lot of conversations individually, one-to-one, and with small groups of members from trade associations. If we keep going at that basis, we're not going to be able to scale up the engagement we need in time. To deliver an effective strategy in the autumn. So we're looking to ensure that we can have much larger and sort of more weighty roundtable engagements with task force members, leveraging the fact that many of you have signed up and given us all the details that we need in order to reach you and group you sensibly. So with much of that sorting done, I think we're in a position to start coming out soon with invitations to sign up for further roundtables. We will continue to take forward the type of engagement we've been doing to date when necessary, given that there are many stakeholders among you with particular value to add, and we'll keep trying to extract that as efficiently as we can. But we want to ensure that we get to as many of you as humanly possible over the summer to ensure that the work that we develop, you feel you've got sort of meaningful ownership of what's in there, that you can be confident in the policy interventions that the government is suggesting we take forward as we drive forward a circular transition, and that you get a chance to also, not just feed in, but think about what you might need to prepare for down the line. So a lot done, an enormous amount to do, but we're diving in head first and prioritising an awful lot of our time and task force time towards delivering the scale of engagement that needs to befit a transformation this complex and large. So that's the end of my update. Hopefully that is useful and interesting.